Donald Trump is intentionally inflicting pain, suffering, and death across America in response, though, to these horrific storms and tornadoes that left devastation in Missouri, Indiana, Kentucky, and elsewhere. Over the past few days, at least 28 people have died, and these states are unable to get resources from FEMA. The Mayor Spencer of St. Louis confirmed that FEMA has not been communicating with her in the city of St. Louis. And essentially she has to do the equivalent of like a GoFundMe to like raise money because FEMA is not providing the resources. Here's Mayor Spencer from St. Louis on MSNBC. Let's play this clip.
Cities across the nation, when experiencing disasters such as this is what the federal government is for. We need your help. We need the help of the broader community. We have set up a fund to help bring in some funding right off the bat just to bridge that gap. But we need federal assistance. There is
FEMA
no way.
there? Is FEMA on the ground yet?
FEMA has not been on the ground. We do not have confirmed assistance from FEMA at this point.
Now, you know, we've been talking about this for some time, right? Really since February, Donald Trump sent DOGE in to completely gut and dismantle the National Weather Service within the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency. Donald Trump has gutted FEMA, and he's bragged. He wants to completely get rid of FEMA, and he says he wants to have the states deal with it. The states aren't equipped to deal with it. That's why we have a freaking federal government in the first place. And I want to show you the data points along the way of what's been happening. So was it 2 weeks ago or so? Donald Trump and his dog killer Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, fired the interim FEMA director, a guy named Cameron Hamilton, who is as MAGA as you get. When he previously ran for Congress, this guy, Cameron Hamilton, he said, I am the MAGA candidate. I want to share with you the moment when Cameron Hamilton got fired because before a congressional committee, he testified that he did not think that FEMA should be destroyed. He said, look, I can't speak for Trump and Kristi Noem. I think FEMA shouldn't be destroyed. Despite being a MAGA cult member, that was enough to get him fired because Trump wants someone to run FEMA who will destroy it from within. So this guy, Cameron Hamilton, got fired. Here, play this clip.
Yesterday, the Secretary testified. Secretary Noem testified. Quite honestly, I found her responses confusing and inadequate. In response to my question, asking her about whether or not this administration seeks to eliminate FEMA, this was her response. And I quote, President Trump has been very clear since the beginning that he believes that FEMA and its response in many, many circumstances has failed the American people, and that FEMA as it exists today should be eliminated, and empowering states to respond to disasters with federal government support. A clear answer. Does this administration seek to eliminate FEMA? And do you support eliminating FEMA?
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to answer the question?
Please.
I'm not going to let you off that easy. Please. Nothing personal.
No, I completely understand. As the senior advisor to the president on disasters and emergency management and to the Secretary of Homeland Security, I do not believe it is in the best interest of the American people to eliminate the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
Okay.
Having said that, I'm not in a position to make decisions and impact outcomes on whether or not a determination such as consequential as that should be made. That is a conversation that should be had between the President of the United States and this governing body on identifying the exact ways and methodologies in which what is prudent for federal investment and what is not.
And just so you see that this guy is as MAGA as you get, when he previously ran for Congress, here's what he said. Play this clip.
I am a MAGA candidate because I think that his agendas, aside from all the rhetoric, were excellent for the betterment of this nation.
Now, the correct answer in the Trump regime, which is the deadly lethal answer, is what dog killer Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said. She said, we want to get rid of FEMA. So here was her testimony. At the same time, Cameron Hamilton answered the question in the incorrect way for the Trump regime. Here's dog killer Secretary of Homeland Security cosplayer Kristi Noem. Play this clip.
President Trump has been very clear since the beginning that he believes that FEMA and its response in many, many circumstances has failed the American people, and that FEMA as it exists today should be eliminated and empowering states to respond to disasters with federal government support.
Now, we also know that after the horrific fires in Los Angeles, where I'm from, and I had to evacuate for about 10 days, Donald Trump came to Los Angeles where he talked about getting rid of FEMA. He said he wants to get rid of it and dismantle it. Just to remind you, here's what Donald Trump said. Play this clip.
I'll also be signing an executive order to begin the process of fundamentally reforming and overhauling FEMA, or maybe getting rid of FEMA. I think, frankly, FEMA is not good. I think when you have a problem like this, I think you want to go and, whether it's a Democrat or Republican governor, you want to use your state to fix it and not waste time calling FEMA. And then FEMA gets here and they don't know the area. They've never been to the area, and they want to give you rules that you've never heard about. They want to bring people that aren't as good as the people you already have. And FEMA's turned out to be a disaster. And you could go back a long way. You could go back to Louisiana. You could go back to some of the things that took place in Texas. It turns out to be the state that ends up doing the work. It just complicates it. I think we're going to recommend that FEMA go away. And we pay directly. We pay a percentage to the state.
Now, I had the opportunity to speak with Democratic Congress member Jared Moskowitz, who ran emergency management for Florida. So he's very familiar with emergency management. And about a month ago or so, or even more, this just shows you why we're trying to get ahead of these stories and predict what's going to happen. I asked Congressmember Moskowitz, I said, what are you most worried about that is not getting enough attention? That was the way I asked it. And Congressmember Moskowitz responded, I am really worried about Donald Trump gutting FEMA and Donald Trump gutting the NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and Donald Trump gutting the National Weather Services, which does the forecasting. Here's what Moskowitz said. Here, play this clip.
I'm deeply concerned what they're doing with FEMA. I mean, look, I'm from Florida. I'm a former director of emergency management. I'm the only former director of emergency management in all of Congress. But if they actually do what Kristi Noem wants to do with FEMA, which is get rid of it, which is what she said, chop it up and give it to other agencies, which won't be more efficient. It'll make it worse if she wants to mess with reimbursement. I mean, you could have a state like Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. They could go bankrupt if they get a Category 4 storm and they don't have federal reimbursement. If the federal government isn't coming out and organizing resources, because FEMA doesn't have a lot of resources. It's DOD that's got the resources. Other agencies, FEMA organizes that and brings it. If no one's doing that after a Katrina for Louisiana or a Helene in North Carolina, people are going to die. And these places are not going to have a good response, and they're not going to recover. I did Hurricane Michael. That was one of the recoveries I did in the Panhandle. Extremely poor area, all Republican, by the way. Without the money the federal government sent in the first Trump administration, these towns would never recover. They'd be gone. And so this is something that, we're not talking about, but we're getting into hurricane season. And I'm worried about whether or not FEMA is going to work. There are people in the Trump administration, in the West Wing, okay, that are from Florida and know this. They got to stop the secretary who's never done a disaster cleanup in her entire life, being the governor where she was, okay, that this is needed. That doesn't mean there doesn't need to be reform, Ben. FEMA does need to reform. They need to get faster, smaller. They need to get out of Homeland. They need to stop doing all of the immigration grants. Let ICE and Homeland run their own grants. FEMA shouldn't be running them. Okay, so there are things we can fix, but to get rid of this for the American people would be devastating beyond belief. And I haven't even talked about what they've done at NOAA about, getting rid of weather balloons and getting rid of people being able to figure out how we're going to track these hurricanes. The hurricane hunters, there's questions whether those planes are going to be able to get in the air. There's time to still fix this. On what DOJ did to those two departments.
So then we heard from an Associated Press reporter who focuses on issues regarding science, issues regarding climate. And he explained the real world implications about how all of this is affecting individuals. Like, if we don't have the weather balloons going up in the sky, that's going to cause major issues. We used to have weather balloons up all the time to help us predict dangerous weather patterns. those weather balloons aren't even going up because DOGE got rid of them. Here, play this clip.
The ultimate consumer of their product, the American public, how are they going to feel the difference?
You're going to see some forecasts, what they call degraded. They may not be as good. In an emergency, there's some concerns about whether people will be warned fast enough and well enough. If you have radar and counties and tornadoes going everywhere, and you only have one set of eyes, something may be missed. The most concrete thing we can see right now is weather balloons. Weather balloons sound very low tech, but they are sort of the key in weather forecasts. It brings measurements from the atmosphere and the ground, and it sort of is the glue to everything. And normally, the Weather Service puts out 100 balloon launches twice a day. So since this has happened, about 17 different stations are not launching either at all or just once a day. 4 years ago, that was only 9 stations. It means all the information that goes into your forecast, which goes into your apps or your television forecast, all that information is just a little bit poorer, forecasts a little weaker. But it's really going to start to affect us in about a month in hurricane season.
And then we heard from the former head of FEMA what his fears are. Here, let's play this clip.
The impact would be across the nation, across sectors. It would affect just about every American, almost every industry and every community. These misguided cuts are really basically saying, especially when you cut research out of the formula, that what we've got right now in terms of our ability to predict these devastating weather events, climate change impacts, that's good enough. We don't need to make any improvements, and that will cause serious problems.
Because, as I understand it, if you stop measuring, that doesn't mean you're stop experiencing the effects of climate change-driven weather patterns. You're just not understanding what's going on or what may happen in the future.
Exactly. I'd love to sit here and tell you, Major, that we know everything about how tornadoes form, how hurricanes form, how tsunamis form. But the fact is we need to continue doing research so that we can improve those forecasts. With people dying, 400 people dying from hurricanes in the Southeast last year, are we really prepared to say, yeah, that's okay? We don't need to make any improvements. So when you cut the research, you cut the ability to improve the forecasts and the predictions. And it's not just hurricanes or tornadoes. The climate side of things includes seasonal outlooks of precipitation, which are used obviously by the agricultural community. The insurance and reinsurance industry wants information about, are we going to have a particularly hot summer? You know, it's 98 degrees in Phoenix today. What's it going to be like in July? The research that will tell us, hey, we got a pretty good idea of what it's going to be like in July in Phoenix has been cut. So we're basically saying, nope, we're not going to make any improvements on that anymore.
And now CBS Evening News did a News Plus. I think they did a pretty thorough job here as well. And they talked about the low morale in FEMA. They talked about how FEMA doesn't have supplies. It doesn't have enough staff. And now we're approaching hurricane season on June 1st. So we're 2 weeks away? And what's going to happen when there's a deadly hurricane and there's no FEMA to help people? I think we're going to see, unless something urgently happens, tens of thousands or even more unnecessary deaths. We see it coming. And I know Trump regime and lots of others are saying, don't look up. Remember the movie, Don't Look Up. Don't look what's happening. And we're screaming it right here. We're telling you, this is going to be the biggest issue imaginable when these hurricanes hit. We're already seeing it with the deadly storms right now, with FEMA not helping what's happening, with the National Weather Service and National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency being cut. What's going to happen when we have these deadly hurricanes? Here, play this clip.
An internal review warning the Federal Emergency Management Agency is not prepared for hurricane season, which starts June 1st.
Here is the main takeaway, John. Quote, as FEMA transforms into a smaller footprint, the intent for this hurricane season is not well understood, Thus, FEMA is not ready. In other words, amid staffing cuts and shortages, plus directives by this administration to further downside for disaster relief to be pushed away from the federal governments and to the states. Not only do FEMA employees believe that they are not prepared for hurricane season, they don't even know what their role is, what their job will be. Other slides in this PowerPoint presentation pointed to problems with morale as well as interagency coordination. One top FEMA official told me today they've been afraid to speak out, but now feel like they need to share what is going on inside the organization that is illegal. Another FEMA staff member put it to me this way. I want to read from my notes, quote, "My impression of our readiness is that it is a physical impossibility for FEMA to be able to support disasters with even a similar efficiency to last year. Hundreds of years of cumulative learned experience and expertise have been lost. And John, we know that hundreds of FEMA employees have both been fired and taken those voluntary buyouts afforded by this administration. Today, the acting administrator at FEMA held a 30-minute town hall where he was asked, are we prepared for hurricane season? He said, give me a few weeks to figure that out. He doesn't have a few weeks. Yeah. It starts June 1st.
And finally, with all of this going on, though, what does Donald Trump say? It mirrors almost identically what Trump was doing during COVID, where he would spread the lies and he would spread the conspiracies, and then he would find a scapegoat and find somebody who's he going to blame, right? So now what's Donald Trump saying? Like, what's his line? He claims that he released all of this water to This is what he said. He says it over and over again. He goes, I released all this water to Los Angeles, and I said, and I would have saved Los Angeles if they would have taken this water. And again, it's the most deranged lie ever. Donald Trump went to dams and released billions of gallons in San Joaquin Valley after all of the fires had been put out. This was after. That water physically can't get to Southern California. It's not connected to Los Angeles. The water literally just gets dumped into farmland and floods it, and then gets rid of the water that the farmers actually need for the summer. So the Trump voters who are, San Joaquin went Trump, Fresno went Trump, Bakersfield voted for Trump. That's like the small areas, small pockets in California that when Trump, he screwed over their lives. And here he is in a deranged way saying, the water. You didn't do anything like that. You dumped unnecessary water onto farmland, flooding it and just getting rid of water that farmers need in the summer. Play this clip.
Los Angeles is not looking too good with what the water. We just sent so much water down their way. They didn't want to take it because it was bad for the environment. They said, no, water's good for the environment. They would have had it when I told them to get it. They wouldn't have had the fires, or it would have been very small.
So anyway, that's where we are. I want to provide you with each detail, each receipt, so you can judge for yourself what's going on. Well, I'm Ben Meiselas. This is the MeidasTouch Network. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 5 million subscribers, and thank you for watching.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.